Roundup on 107.7 The Bronx, your one-step source for the biggest headlines, campus buzz, and must-know stories straight from the pages of the Rider News. Breaking news, Rider Pride, and what's trending around campus, we've got it all wrapped up and delivered to your ears every week. So sit back, tune in, and get the scoop, because knowing what's happening at Rider has never sounded this good.
I'm Benjamin Chenault, sports editor of the Rider News, and this is your Rider News Roundup on 107.7 The Bronx. As Rider rebuilds from its ongoing budgetary troubles, the university's most recent audited financial statements show a nearly $9 million improvement in its operating loss for fiscal 2025, an indication of positive budget drawing nearer. Vice President for Finance, Chief Administrative Officer, and Treasurer Thomas Papa, who joined Rider in September, said in an interview with the Rider News on February 2nd that while enrollment was going down in fiscal 2025, the Lomos administration was taking cuts around the edges, but they did not target the main driver of expense, labor. Papa said he also began to reevaluate Rider's choice of food, cleaning, and information technology services to further enhance the plan's financial impacts. However, while these results will be noticeable in the coming months, Papa said Rider's break-even point will take a bit of time. Read more about Rider's 2025 audit and Caroline Haviland's story on theridernews.com. Layla Johnson's words of advice to anyone struggling with a busy schedule or with a daunting task ahead were be comfortable, be vulnerable, and eat that frog. Johnson explained that this phrase is something she learned at her internship at Kreischer Miller, a Philadelphia accounting and tax firm, where she is currently a busy seasoned tax intern. Apart from her internship, Johnson is the treasurer of the women's club volleyball team, the treasurer of the Asian American Student Association, the president of the Korean Pop Culture Club, the president and founding member of Pulse Dance Crew, Rider's Korean pop dance cover team, and has been working at Saxby since her sophomore year. Keeping her own words of advice in mind when looking to the future, Johnson hopes to pursue her Certified Public Accountant and Certified Management Accountant license, continue to stay in touch with the Korean Cultural Foundation of Philadelphia, and teach dance workshops. Read more about Layla Johnson and Black Excellence by Sophia Santiago on theridernews.com. Sometimes, chemistry does not need to be built from scratch. It can be carried. For junior guard Caleb Smith and senior guard Zion Cruz, it was before the bright lights of Division I basketball that this on-court synergy was built. At the close of his season at Garden City, Smith was looking to make the jump to the National Collegiate Athletic Association Division I level. So he phoned a friend. And so, the pair, Cruz, reconnected as Bronx, where they continued to grow through the game, consistently improving their basketball IQ and becoming better teammates. In the 2025-2026 season, the two are ranked as leading players in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, with Smith being the 6th best rebounder in the conference and Cruz as the 19th best scorer. Read more about Caleb Smith and Zion Cruz and Samantha Clark's story on theridernews.com. All of this week's content can be found on our website, and be sure to stay updated by following @The Rider News on all your social media platforms. I'm Benjamin Chenault, and this has been your Rider News Roundup.
That's all the headlines for this week's Rider News Roundup. But don't worry, we've got you covered every Wednesday with a brand new report to keep you in the know. Catch up on all the stories anytime at theridernews.com and listen to every roundup on demand at 1077thebronx.com/Rider News Roundup. Because when it comes to what's happening at Rider, you'll always hear it here first. And now, let's get back to the biggest hits and the best variety only on 1077 The Bronx.
1077 The Bronx, 1077thebronx.com, nominated for 8 intercollegiate Broadcasting System Media Awards, including Best On-Air Pledge Drive for our first ever radiothon and Best College Radio Station in the nation. Keep it tuned to The Bronx to find out if our team of student broadcasters bring home the gold on Saturday, February 21st. This is the Tom Hill Show on Monday morning after the biggest game of the year in the United States. I think one can say that, and the game did not necessarily live up hype-wise, although the Seattle Seahawks did show the entire league that if you build defensively and build through the draft, You can win a Super Bowl. And they did just that. 29-13, the final score last night. And they had Drake May under duress all night long. It was just one of those games where, even at 12-0, even at 19-0, New England was still in it per se in terms of the score. Like, they were still in striking distance if they were able to generate something offensively, but that just wasn't the case. Drake May, we were kind of waiting for him to eventually pop in these playoffs, and I kind of individually thought that, all right, the game in the snow against Denver, that was just situational. They're playing in the snow against the backup quarterback. They don't have to do a lot. Run the football, be smart. Mike Vrabel knows what he's doing. But this game last night, and I knew Seattle's defense was great, but boy, Matt Stafford looked really calm and poised against them a couple of weeks ago. Drake May and the Pats could not do a thing. They couldn't do a thing last night. And, everyone says, well, the easy schedule. Well, when you take a look and actually break down how the Pats did against competitive teams, they really weren't great. And I get that. I get that 100%. And I kind of thought, well, that's just kind of, picking at hairs and grasping at straws. I kind of thought, well, all right, they're still a playoff team. They still made it to the Super Bowl. And I thought that eventually this Patriot offense would open up. I thought Stephon Diggs was going to be a big factor. I thought they would use Stevenson in the passing game. In space, I thought Travion Henderson would be a factor. I thought May would get the ball moving. And throughout about 95% of the night, he was under constant duress. And the biggest problem that the Patriots are going to face is twofold. Number one, this was by far the weakest AFC crop that we've seen in probably about a decade. Like, every year in the AFC, we see a Brady or a Mahomes or a Josh Allen or a Lamar or a Burrow or some sort of vaunted team with a really good defense that poses problems. We didn't see that this year, and I said it a lot on my show back in the fall, and, you hear it all the time where, well, we didn't know who was going to win the Super Bowl this year. It was wide open. We had no idea who was going to come out of the AFC, and when the Chiefs were officially eliminated in the regular season, late in the regular season, everyone kind of thought, all right, whose year is it going to be? I thought a lot of pressure was on Josh Allen to make it his year, and he didn't get the job done. So I thought once he lost to Denver, I'm thinking, okay, Bo Nix, Drake May. I wouldn't say it was a passing of the guard or a passing of the torch, or changing of the guard, rather. But I thought in my head, maybe this could be an opportunity for May and the Patriots to kind of cement themselves as potentially the next team in the AFC that could pose problems for people, but just wasn't the case. That wasn't the case, and I think a lot of times, or a lot of people are going to walk away from last night and think that this was really their only shot. And honestly, I would agree with that take. I think this was their only shot. I just think that's problem number one with New England. I think problem number one is the AFC is going to get a lot better. Eric Bieniemy is back with Kansas City, and that's back when that offense was humming. The last couple of years with Nagy, Mahomes, the numbers have dipped. The offense hasn't looked as sharp. And I think the Chiefs have kind of gotten away with, all right, we live with a lackluster offensive roster because we have number 15. And I kind of think that runs counter to a lot of what the NFC teams tend to think in terms of team building, which is the quarterback's important, but we want to build the team from the ground up through the draft, defense, offensive line, running back, coach. So just kind of different the way we've seen different teams kind of take different philosophies. And, I kind of floated this out here about maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I thought in my head, could we potentially see a shift in the NFL where could we be moving back towards the days where the quarterback isn't as important if you're able to build a team this vaunted? I mean, we saw it with the Eagles last year. We see it with the Seahawks this year. Great defense, great coach. And, a lot of people have issues with Sirianni. But internally last year, Philadelphia was great. Internally this year, Seattle, great. Sam Darnold played fine last night. He didn't light the world on fire. He didn't need to. Kenneth Walker, Super Bowl MVP, 5 yards a carry. And thank God for Kenneth Walker, because that offense really couldn't move against New England. You know, we like to talk, and rightfully so, we're talking about Seattle's defense this morning because they're the Super Bowl winners. But that Seattle offense outside of Kenneth Walker was not moving the ball with a whole lot of fluidity against a really good Patriots defense. And the Patriots, you know, both teams coming into it were stronger defensive teams than they were offensive. But Sam Darnold and Drake May both had great regular seasons. And I'm a little shell-shocked at the way that this game turned out. I thought that Drake May, in a neutral environment, given 2 weeks of prep, the type of regular season that he had, second in the MVP voting, I thought this offense was going to come up with some sort of game plan for this Seattle defense. But they were bringing pressure. They were bringing pressure off the edges. Will Campbell was getting beat just all night long, and that's another problem, and that's what I'm going to segue towards as well, because, you know, Will Campbell, 4th overall draft pick, and it just doesn't look like the tackle spot is going to be his future. Unless he's able to build into something, maybe they move him to guard, but you don't draft the guard top 5, so they're going to have to find some way to rectify that pick. Again, it's really early in his career, so you don't really raise the white flag right now because it's still so early. But there are definitely some issues at hand. And I think that there are certain things that got exposed last night in terms of looking at the Patriots in the foreseeable future. You know, how's the left tackle spot going to look? Are they going to maybe get another weapon? You know, Booty's fine. Diggs was fine. I like the running backs. I like Henderson a lot. I think he should be utilized more next year. But will you get more weapons for Drake May? The defense is fine. There's no concern there. That defense actually kept them in the game for the better part of the third quarter. I mean, it was 12-0 till the end of that third quarter. Then Darnold hits Barner for the first touchdown of the game. But you take a look at this New England team. They're going to run into a lot of issues in the upcoming seasons. Kansas City's going to get a lot better. Baltimore has a new coach. They could take off. They still have Lamar Jackson. If he's healthy next year, I mean, he was really close to perfect in the regular season in 2024. And really, the only issue with Lamar has just been injuries. So it hasn't been productivity, it's been injuries. And he's less productive, obviously, when he's hurt, as is everyone. So, you know, there are definitely opportunities in certain seasons where you have to realize, all right, this may be our only shot, and we have to take advantage of this. And New England didn't. Because now next year, you're also looking at Denver with the healthy Bo Nix. They were the 1 seed in the AFC. And I know people have some issues with them. I don't know how good they're even going to be, but got to figure they're going to win about 9 games next year. Buffalo still has Josh Allen. I know they have a new coach, and it's Joe Brady. It's an internal hire, but they still have Josh Allen, so you know they're still going to win some games. But now New England next year has a tougher schedule. It's going to be interesting to see how everything boils down and shapes out with the Patriots, because I think they could be in for a rude awakening and maybe win about 9 games next year. Obviously, injuries all play a factor into any team. So, you know, it changes the landscape of the league if another quarterback goes down, and, you know, maybe the AFC is just as weak as it was this year. Because I think it is fair to say that the AFC was very weak this year. I mean, I think a lot of times, you know, back in the day with those Yankee Red Sox ALCSs, everyone said, well, that's the World Series, and whatever NL team loses, you know, the actual World Series is kind of watered down because the ALCS is so good. Well, I kind of come out of this thinking the NFC Championship game might have been the Super Bowl. I mean, every game that the Seahawks and Rams played this year, and had 3 of them, came down to the wire, and they were fun, and they were back and forth. It was just Stafford, Darnold going band for band, high-scoring games. But I don't know. I kind of think that this Patriot team, this was their opportunity to win it. And I don't really see a world in which they're going to get back here in the next couple of years. Still have a really good coach. Drake May will only enter year 3 next year, and he was second in MVP voting this year. So could he even elevate his game to a higher level? Maybe. Maybe it's possible. It is definitely possible. But I just think, we say this a lot with a lot of young quarterbacks, and we say, Jaden Daniels and the Commanders, they'll be back. Or, way back in the day with Cam and the Panthers and Matt Ryan at Atlanta, and, you keep going further back and you look at, will Russell Wilson be back? And he was back the next year, but then he never returned. And you take a look at Jared Goff in 2018 with the Rams. He hasn't been back. So Burrow hasn't been back. Take a look at a lot of these quarterbacks and a lot of these teams that even if they win the Super Bowl, everything changes. Free agency, coordinators leave, egos, money. It's really hard to repeat, which is why it doesn't happen a lot. So it's really hard to repeat, but it's also really hard to get back there because, a lot of times, even when you do reach the Super Bowl, you do get some breaks along the way. Patriots got a big break. They played a backup quarterback in the AFC Championship game. So I don't know. I just have a hard time believing that a team that had this easy of a run is all of a sudden going to improve drastically going into next season and then the year after that. I mean, we still got to get through next season first, but I kind of think that Drake May, while still a really good quarterback and a great quarterback and a top 10, top 8 quarterback in this sport, I think this is his apex, and I kind of think that the New England Patriots as a team, I'm curious to see if they're going to be able to draft around him. Because he's been able to make it work with good weapons, but not great weapons. Jackson Smith and Jigba's a great weapon. Kenneth Walker's a great weapon. Drake May doesn't have that. Drake May doesn't have a Saquon Barkley or an A.J. Brown. He just doesn't have that. He doesn't have an elite tight end or an elite receiver who's a deep threat who could just space the field. And, the running backs are good. I really like Henderson. And I like Stevenson, but Stevenson's best used in space. He's not really a 25-plus carry guy who can, tote the rock on the ground. He's more of a guy that, you dump it down to him about 3, 4, 5 times a game and then see if he could do something in space. But, again, with this Patriot team, it just kind of felt like throughout the entire course of the game, we were kind of waiting, will the offense eventually wake up? And they just never did. They never did. And you got to give a lot of credit to this Seahawks team. Because I think throughout the entire course of the season, we were kind of like, they're winning games, but will they win the game? And I think everyone had consistent, and rightfully so, had doubts about Sam Darnold. I mean, even over the course of the offseason, everyone thought, all right, Sam Darnold's a Seahawk. Is that even an upgrade over Geno Smith? Mike McDonald, year 2, how's that really going to look? Everyone had questions, and I think rightfully so, because we hadn't seen Sam Darnold put together consistent winning seasons. He was great last year in Minnesota, but we all thought that was a perfect offensive ecosystem. We all thought, he was playing with Kevin O'Connell and the best receiver in football. How's he going to look with JSN, who prior to this season was looked at as a 1,200-yard threat? And Mike McDonald, who was looked at as a good young head coach, and these defensive players who were good, but nobody knew how good they'd be. Rookie Nicky Amwanwuri smashed on that draft pick. Devin Witherspoon, one of the best corners in the league. So you take a look at the Seahawks team and kind of the way they're able to change the landscape of the NFL potentially, because they kind of do it differently where, the last couple of years it's been great offensive minds at the helm for these NFC teams. And with Mike McDonald, it's a great defensive mind at the helm. So I'm kind of curious to see how that will transpire. But again, 29-13, and really the score doesn't even indicate how bad it was because Seattle you kind of knew that Drake May and that offense just wasn't going to piece together anything. They had something going there at the end of that third quarter, but you knew it was just too little, too late. And then when Drake May threw that interception, and then the interception that was returned back for the touchdown from Nwosu, you kind of knew that spelled the end. And yeah, Now the Patriots have a lot of searching to do, and the Seahawks can party it up because they are Super Bowl 60 champions, the second Super Bowl in their franchise's history. But we'll touch on the game a little bit more because there are still some things that I want to touch on more from the Seattle perspective, the winning side. Mark your calendars. 107.7 The Bronx Excellent Egg Hunt is on its way and better than ever. Join us on the Campus Mall on Tuesday, March 31st at 11 a.m. to experience the event that helped the Bronx win Best Giveaway at the 2025 Intercollegiate Broadcasting System Media Awards. Don't forget, there are 10,000 eggs, 20,000 pieces of candy, and a chance to win so many cool prizes, including our biggest and most iconic prize, a 3 or 4 night Royal Caribbean cruise for 2 to the Bahamas, provided by Josh Harry Travel. For more details, including a list of other activities and bites to eat, go to 1077thebronx.com/egg hunt. We'll be back with more from the Tom Hill Show after these underwriting announcements on the Princeton Review's 18th ranked best college radio station, 1077 The Bronx.
Eggs. You like them, you love them, unless they make you fart, in which case you probably eat them anyway. They're a great source of protein, a breakfast.
By the end of the week, wind down with the happy hour menu every Thursday and Friday. And don't forget, happy hour lasts all day on Sunday, making it the best time to relax and enjoy B2 Bistro and Bar to the fullest. For more information and to reserve a table, it's b2bistro.com/Bordentown.
107.7 The Bronx has very exciting news. We are officially launching a live video stream. Keep listening to The Bronx for details on when you can start watching student shows like Wake Up Rider live every weekday morning from 8 to 10 a.m. to not only hear all of the fun shenanigans, but to see exclusive behind-the-scenes moments as well. Keep it tuned in to The Bronx on Air, online and on app to see how you can watch your favorite student shows in the future. Welcome back to the Tom Hill Show and your 2025 National Association of Broadcasters Marconi Radio Award-nominated station, 107.7 The Bronx. Half hour more here on a Monday morning, and it's still cold, but do have a lot to talk about. And obviously there was a huge game last night. Seattle Seahawks Super Bowl winners for the second time in franchise history, and kind of the DNA and the ingredients of the first one, while this defense was nowhere near as good as that defense. Similar type of team where I think early in Russell Wilson's career, I think we kind of maybe misremembered a little bit, where we thought Russell Wilson was elite the whole time. But Russell Wilson got great when the Legion of Boom kind of eventually phased out, whether it be injury or just retirement or whatnot. But early in his career, that team's identity was the Legion of Boom. That team, obviously beast mode as well, but it really just shows that, and I say this a lot, smart organizations, even if it does take 5 to 10 years, eventually they figure it out again. And the Seahawks were able to figure it out again. New regime, obviously, because it's been 12 years. But the ingredients are the same. Great defense, a quarterback that people like. But again, he didn't have to do a lot last night. All the Seahawks really wanted Sam Darnold to do, and he did this, do not turn the ball over. And that's pretty impressive because New England's defense is tough. Christian Gonzalez is one of the best corners in the league. And Darnold, especially early, was throwing a lot of tight window throws that could have spelled for a disaster. However, he was able to just make it work, realize when a play, it was time to abort a play, and don't throw the stupid interception. Don't do anything that can let that Patriot defense think, we're going to re-energize this offense and get back into this game. Because Collinsworth, and he said it well, he really called it early on, and even Tirico said it as well, where that game kind of, the way it was going, the flow it was going, it just felt like nothing was happening offensively for New England, so something in terms of scoring had to happen defensively. And they were right. It just never happened. It just never happened. The strip sack never happened. The interception never happened. The special teams gaffe never happened. They were just never able to, I don't want to say generate any big plays. I mean, it's very tough. A lot of times you're hoping the offense gives you one. And there were maybe about 1 or 2 times where Darnold might have got away with one. There was one in the end zone, I think it was right before halftime, to Smith and Jigba, that Gonzalez could have intercepted. New England wouldn't have had any time to really do anything offensively anyway. So kind of a moot point. But again, you take a look at the ingredients of this Seahawks team and kind of the way that they want to win. It's some games like the NFC Championship game, you need Sam to hit deep shots, and you need Sam to sling it. And he does that well, and he did it close to perfectly against the Rams. And he had to. He had to, because had he had a subpar night, they were not winning that game. But when you take a look at the night last night and against this really good New England defense that's been giving offenses trouble throughout the course of the season, throughout the course of the playoffs, Justin Herbert and that Charger offense couldn't do anything against them. We saw, obviously, C.J. Stroud have the 4 turnovers in the first half. And we've been kind of waiting for, the other shoe to fall with Seattle, but also with New England, where, it was kind of an interesting Super Bowl because I think the storylines weren't as developed as maybe previous years because, A, we haven't seen this current regime with New England, and we also haven't seen this current regime with Seattle yet. So it was kind of new the way they formed and came together. But the one thing that I'll say is I think everyone was kind of waiting for New England to eventually falter and Seattle to falter. And I know individually I kind of thought to myself that if Seattle's able to put it together, they were going to win it all. But I didn't really have that take develop until about right before the NFC Championship game, honestly. I knew they beat San Francisco because San Francisco was banged up, and they smoked San Francisco. But I thought there was a world in which maybe if the Bears win against the Rams, maybe the Bears could waltz into Seattle and do something. Or I thought, all right, the Rams now beat the Bears, so maybe there's a world in which the Rams can walk into Seattle and win. I kind of think everyone thought, all right, we will eventually see the Sam Darnold meltdown. And it just never happened. And the reason it never happened, Kenneth Walker and that defense, and just kind of the way that they want to play football. And it's also a testament to the maturity level of Sam Darnold. This is a quarterback who was deep in bad football and bad coaching and just mired in garbage with the New York Jets to start his career. And he didn't do a lot to help because it's not like he played well back then. So he gets drafted 3rd overall in 2018, and he has to deal with the Jets, who one of the worst franchises in the last 20 years or so. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think they actually have the longest current playoff drought in all of sports, not just football, in all of sports. And that's pretty impressive, too. You know, especially a league now that 7 AFC teams make it. I think it was the 2010 regular season was the last time that the Jets made the playoffs. That's really impressive. I mean, that's really impressive, especially a league with the Lions and the Browns. Like, that's unbelievable. But anyways, he starts his career with the Jets, and then he goes to Carolina, and it just never works. And it's Adam Gase and Matt Rule, and both those guys do not currently have NFL head coaching jobs, nor do they have coordinating jobs. So it just shows you where he was at in his career as a young 22, 23, 24-year-old trying to navigate life and playing in the NFL. And he didn't have the best support systems. And a lot of times that's what happens with quarterbacks. When you're a high draft pick, oftentimes you're going to go to an awful situation, and your job is to be their savior. And not every quarterback can handle that. Not every quarterback's ready for it. A lot of times I think we sometimes anoint these young 21, 22-year-old kids coming out of college with a lot of talent. And I think sometimes we anoint them as the savior of a franchise, and that's not always the case. They may pass the eye test in terms of their arm, their athleticism, all the good stuff that comes with playing the quarterback position, but a lot of times it's what's in between the ears. And obviously, you know, it's a funny kind of full circle moment with Sam Darnold back in 2019 where on a Monday Night Football game against the Patriots when he was with the Jets, he was caught. The mic caught him saying, "I'm seeing ghosts out there." And it was kind of an admission. That defense for New England was great. But it was kind of an admission back then that wouldn't say he was ill-prepared, but it was tough. It was tough. And I think this really shows you, or it shows all of us really, that if you do have the right system around you, and that's all he really needed was to find the right system, find the McVay, find the Shanahan. And in his case, it was Kyle Shanahan and Kevin O'Connell. He was a backup with the Niners a couple of years ago. And then Minnesota last year. Minnesota moves off of him. And I think this, to me, is where the league could go. Could. I'm not saying this is going to happen. I'm not stamping a take. Because I still do think that when you do have an elite quarterback, they could make magic happen. And we've seen it plenty of times with Patrick Mahomes, who has 3 Super Bowls. And he trailed in the first one against the Niners. He trailed against Philly in the first one. And then he trailed in the second one against San Francisco and won back-to-back. And obviously the Eagles, that team was so stacked last year. And, you know, he was screwed very early in that game. But when you take a look at and I've said this a couple of times before on this show, could we be entering kind of a new philosophy or way that quarterback development takes shape in the NFL? Could it be a little bit different nowadays? Because we see how troubling it is when a quarterback is responsible for a high percentage of your team's cap. We say it a lot with running backs, but even with quarterbacks. Now, you could say, well, Seattle just got lucky signing Darnold. Well, Darnold eventually developed into the quarterback that he is today. So you take a look at a lot of these bad quarterbacks right now that everyone's ready to write off, and rightfully so because they haven't been productive. You look at it, Anthony Richardson. You look at a Bryce Young, and it's up and down more with Bryce Young, but with Anthony Richardson, it's been all down. He's kind of the interesting quarterback these next coming year or years where, there have been rumors. Could he go to the Vikings? I kind of like that. I like that for Minnesota because he's way more dynamic. The potential ceiling for Anthony Richardson is 25 times the quarterback that J.J. McCarthy's potential ceiling will be. I don't see J.J. McCarthy's ceiling as very high. I could see a world in which Anthony Richardson's ceiling is. So with that said, I think if we look at this, and I'll kind of zoom out more of a bird's eye view or more of a generalized view and not just honing in on Anthony Richardson, if you take a look at a quarterback that's maybe under 26 years old that was written off after one or two poor seasons, if the arm strength is there, if the talent is there, if the mobility is there, maybe it's just better that quarterback goes to an organization like a Rams, like a Seahawks, like a Vikings, like a 49ers. Get with a really good offensive coach and see if your career could soar from there. Because if you take a look at the Super Bowls that have been won in the 2020s, the NFC is doing it differently than the AFC. The AFC, we have the elite quarterback. The roster might be B minus, B plus. But with Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson haven't even reached a Super Bowl. And I think a lot of that is because, well, look at their coaches. McDermott, gone. Harbaugh, gone. Andy Reid and company, I think they've waned as play callers over the last couple of seasons. So Patrick Mahomes had to do a lot of the heavy lifting there. But that's kind of the AFC's ingredients. We have the elite quarterbacks, so the roster maybe takes a back seat. Because A, you have to pay the quarterback a lot of money, so the roster is going to be limited. Because there's just not enough money to allocate to other positions. The wealth isn't able to be distributed to, a corner or a right guard or a running back or a linebacker. But when you take a look at the NFC side since the 2020s, it's older quarterbacks or young quarterbacks with elite rosters. And the quarterbacks, I would say, are very good. If you could win a Super Bowl with a quarterback, I think that quarterback is good, especially in the last 15 years. And I know we have issues with this year's AFC and it being weak, but Brady and the Bucs, Stafford and the Rams, Hurts and the Eagles, Darnold and the Seahawks. All four of those teams, well coached, great rosters, and the rosters were built up. Where you think about the roster maybe right before you think about the quarterback. And again, I don't think this is going to move the league. I don't know if we're going to have just an absolute paradigm shift. I don't think there's going to be a world in which all of a sudden every team is going to try to copy the Seahawks or copy the Rams or copy the Eagles. Just because I think there are a lot of issues. Number one, not every organization is smart. We know that. And number two, I do definitely think that you have to have the right people in place. Scouting department, your GM. A lot of this hinges on your ability to scout and draft well and hit on draft picks. Not just first rounders either. You have to hit in every single round. And I think that, at the end of the day, there still is something to be said. He was hurt this year, but there still is something to be said about Patrick Mahomes and having that type of quarterback at the helm. He's able to play trailing. He's able to play in shootouts. He's able to play with the lead. He's able to use his legs. There's a lot at play there. So I definitely do think it's an interesting think piece. It's something to kind of, maybe spend some time thinking about where, do organizations who haven't been good the last 10 plus years, like the Raiders or the Browns or whoever, do they maybe think, well, let's just build the roster and have a quarterback who's maybe B plus, A minus, who's not an all-world game changer? Is that the way to go, as opposed to we have an elite quarterback and we're just going to hope he can play hero ball and get us to the promised land? I think there are definitely issues with both if you do it wrong. And I also think that there are issues, if you try with the quarterback, because if he's good, eventually you're going to have to pay him. And if you can't draft well, then you're looking at an expensive quarterback who's going to be responsible for a lot of the cap. And you're not going to have a lot of talent around said quarterback to make things happen, like the Cowboys, like the Dolphins. And we'll see with the Packers. And you could argue even the Ravens and the Bills, even though they have elite quarterbacks. But that's kind of where, I'm curious to see where this league goes, because it is a copycat league. Like, when the Rams were great back in 2018, everyone tried copying the Rams. And then the Rams took a bit of a step back, and then they had to pivot, and they had to get better at the quarterback position. So they made the trade for Matthew Stafford, and that eventually buoyed them into a Super Bowl again, and that one they won over Cincinnati. So I think eventually, we have a lot of conversations because the offseason's so long, and we still have 2 more months before the draft. And I think a lot of times we have these think pieces where, all right, where will the league look? Where's the league going to be, and how will it look in about 2 to 5 years? I mean, we all have our predictions. I do definitely think that the Chiefs will be back. I have my doubts and reservations about the Patriots, just because I think it's going to be tough. I also don't know how they're going to draft on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, we've seen Will Campbell was a mess last night, and that's going to be a bit of an issue moving forward. And again, I said this at the beginning of the show. Will he eventually just maybe find a spot at guard? But again, the problem is you have to try to rectify drafting a guard inside the top 5. You don't do that at the guard position. You do that if you want a franchise-changing tackle and a franchise-changing left tackle, and he just got absolutely abused. And I know Seattle's defense is one of the best we've seen, and they had one of the most impressive showings in a Super Bowl. I mean, the last 2 Super Bowl winners have had really impressive showings on the defensive side of the ball. So could that be where the league moves? I don't know. We still have to wait and find out. We still have to wait and see. Again, this was a bit of a weirder year where we didn't really have Mahomes healthy, and the Chiefs, who we've been used to seeing the last couple of years, and Philadelphia also was kind of up and down all year. There were issues with their offense and their offensive coordinator. So you got to figure both of those teams will be back, and maybe the NFL will look a little bit more like we've seen the last couple of years rather than this year. But again, we've still have a lot of time before we even get to the draft, and we have a ton of time before we get to the 2026 NFL regular season. 107.7 The Bronx is switching things up this year. Instead of Dessert Wars, prepare yourself for a brand new contest, Build the Ultimate Bronx Witch. This will be your chance to have your very own creation be the signature sandwich of Rider University and win a Royal Caribbean cruise for 2 to the Bahamas, courtesy of Josh Harry Travel. Stay tuned to The Bronx and watch your Rider email for more information of this exciting new competition. We'll be back with more from the Tom Hill Show after these underwriting announcements on your 8-time 2026 IBS Media Award nominated station, 107.7 The Bronx.
Wake Up Rider and other programming on 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7 The Bronx Retro is underwritten by Miller Keystone Blood Center. It only takes
friends, connections, and see what Greek life has to offer for you to enhance your writer experience. Follow Writer Greek Life on Instagram for important deadlines or any questions about the recruitment process.
There is so much happening this spring at 107.7 The Bronx, which means there's a lot of behind-the-scenes contents to be seen. Funny real station highlights, sponsored trips, and exclusive moments are just a few of the reasons why you should engage with The Bronx on social media. Keep up with The Bronx by following us on Instagram or Threads at 1077 The Bronx, on TikTok at 1077 The Bronx WRRC, and even on Facebook at 1077 The Bronx to see what we're up to on and off the air. Welcome back to the Tom Hill Show and your 5-time NAB Marconi Award nominee for College Radio Station of the Year, 1077 The Bronx. This hour treated all towards the big game last night, 29-13, the Seahawks with their second Super Bowl win and their first in 12 years. That one obviously way more lopsided at 43-8. And, I spent this entire show I started with thinking about how New England might be in a situation where, well, what did they do in these next couple of seasons? Because the AFC, at least we predict it to get a lot better and more competitive, and I think it will. But I just kind of wanted to take a minute and think about this Seattle Seahawks team and kind of the build up to this Super Bowl. And, it's interesting because I kind of feel like throughout the last couple of seasons, it feels like we've all thought they've done the wrong thing, and then we end up being wrong, or at least I end up being wrong. Because what I think they should have done, they do the opposite. And I think, well, that won't work. And it works. And it's worked. And now they have a Super Bowl. I thought moving off of Russell Wilson, bringing in Geno Smith, who's never been a starter and never had any success at the NFL level, I thought that was stupid. And it was a disaster for Russ in Denver year one with Sean Payton. With Nathaniel Hackett. And then him and Sean Payton never saw eye to eye. It never worked out for him in Denver. But, with Seattle, it did work out with Geno Smith for a little. They went to the playoffs that first year with him in 2022. First year without Russ. And then they move off Geno for Sam Darnold, who only had 1 year of excellence and also melted down the stretch last year with the Vikings. So you take a look at everything that the Seattle Seahawks have done. And you kind of figure, when you take a look at Sam Darnold's success, think about how many teams had this guy. Think about how many teams wrote this guy off. Think about Baltimore, too, with Mike McDonald. And I know Baltimore has been great for the last decade, and they've been competitive, and they had their Super Bowl in the early 2010s. But Mike McDonald was a coordinator under John Harbaugh. Harbaugh's now gone. McDonald's now a Super Bowl champion. I know it's kind of taboo to promote the coordinator and bring him up to the head coaching spot, and then you kind of leave the head coach in no man's land. I know that's not how it normally works, but you have to sometimes get creative as an organization and seize the opportunity when you see fit, and the Seattle Seahawks did just that. And, I think it really shows that, back to the point that I made with these quarterbacks, is it better to just be a backup with Shanahan or McVay or Kevin O'Connell or McDonald or one of these offensive-minded gurus who can maybe turn your career around? I look at like a Justin Fields. Everyone's writing him off, and rightfully so, because he hasn't been productive. But Sam Darnold wasn't productive. Baker Mayfield wasn't productive until they were. I stopped believing in Sam Darnold. I didn't think it was ever going to work out in his career. I thought he's a backup with San Francisco. He'll just keep on being a backup for a couple of years, maybe get another starting shot, not look very productive, or maybe just look productive in spurts. And I thought that was just going to be his career. He was just going to last maybe another 3 to 5 years, make some money, be a backup, and that was going to be it. But he has catapulted himself into a different sphere of, I don't want to say talent, but just the way we obviously approach him and the way we view him as it pertains to other quarterbacks in the league. Is he a top 5 quarterback in the league? No. Is he top 8? I don't know. He's a Super Bowl champ. So, a lot of times we have these discussions where, I put Jordan Love 9. Well, I'm going to put Dak Prescott 11. Well, I'm going to put this guy here. It's like, He won a Super Bowl. It was with a stacked roster, but he's a Super Bowl champion, and this was the DNA that the Seattle Seahawks wanted to use to win this Super Bowl. And they've kind of proved everyone wrong over the last couple of years. And it is kind of fitting that the way they win this Super Bowl is the way that they won the first one. Like, it's not with the world's best quarterback. It's not with this all-world offense. It's with defense. It's with this defense that was built well in the draft. Wouldn't say it rivals the Legion of Boom just because of how legendary and how unbelievable the Legion of Boom was just everywhere. But Seattle is kind of, I'm a little bit less hesitant to say they're going to have a drop-off. Obviously, it's so tough to sustain success over different seasons. Would I pick them to win it all next year? No, probably not. But they're a really good team. They're a really good team, and they really, the score doesn't even indicate how bad of a blowout that was. 29-13, and it just felt like New England Drake May, they just had no shot. But the Seattle Seahawks, for the second time in their franchise history, are able to win the big one. Thank you for listening to The Tom Hill Show. We'll be back next Monday from 10 to 11. Stay tuned for more of the biggest hits and best variety on the Princeton Review's 18th ranked best college radio station. 8-time 2026 nominee of an IBS Media Award and 5-time National Association of Broadcasters Marconi Radio Award nominee for College Radio Station of the Year. 107.7 The Bronx and 107.7thebronx.com.
107.7 The Bronx, WRRC-FM, Lawrenceville, New Jersey. No. Oh, it's me, the cable news censor, and I'm designed to keep you from the truth. Today's broadcast